Also, it's a 1.83% drawdown on the Nasdaq. That's about 20,758. The volatility index is up also to about 24 now. So it's a good 18.5%. We could see a 2.5% drawdown today. That could be big. Let's keep in mind. Let's see what happens. This is pretty much an abrupt live because we're just getting news that Trump's putting in a 50% tariff on Apple, and then he's putting in, sorry, a 25% tariff on Apple if they continue making their products in India, and 50% tariffs on European Union because apparently the talks are going nowhere. So yeah, this should be a fun day to see what actually happens. Might just be something to keep a watch on. We'll be live most likely till market opens or before that. If we have engagement, we have questions, we can keep going. But yeah, so let me just uh, let me just try seeing how bad could it get. So you have a 20% move on the VIX. That's looking closer to hitting 25. Now the question is that do you believe that these tariffs would come through, or considering that the Europeans and Americans are talking today, would they have some form of a deal and this is just him going in trying to push harder to get what he wants when it comes to the European deal? So that's something to keep in mind as well. Anyways, let me just try seeing. Let's wait for some time to see if some part of the crowd builds up. Because this is pretty big news. Currently, he's been saying that the European Union, which was formed for the primary purpose of taking advantage of the United States on trade, has been very difficult to deal with. Their trade barriers and their taxes, all of that has led to a trade deficit with the US over $250 billion a year. And he's recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1st, 2025. So that's a scenario that's going to get pretty ugly for the stock markets. There's no tariff if the product is built or manufactured in the United States. And thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, what I'm guessing here is that this is more of a tactic that he's trying to do because the US trade representatives are meeting the European Union trade representatives today. So they want to go in with, instead of the carrot and the stick approach, he wants to go in with the stick and try seeing what actually happens. Now, this is an abrupt live. We're going live purely because of the news that's come out. Otherwise, I plan to go live only tomorrow once market closes for the week. And at the moment, it's not looking like a good day. You're looking at about 2% down on the NASDAQ. You're looking at the volatility index hitting about 24.22. Now, that's a high of almost the past three weeks since we've seen this kind of a high on the volatility index. So that's something to keep in mind. Stocks are down anywhere from 3.5% to 4%. Let me just go ahead and see what's happening with Apple, because Apple's down about 3.75%. All the news. So I have the news here as well, so that just in case something happens, I can just update you guys as well of what exactly is happening. But currently, Trump's recommending 50% tariff on the EU starting June 1st. And June 1st, not that far. I mean, it's pretty much just a week and a few days away. So, and you have 3 days of a holiday for Memorial Day. So you got Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Looking at that, you just have maybe another week of trading before these tariffs come into effect. So You're going to need something to happen this week or this weekend in order to start getting some form of a truce or something to figure out. Now, what I do believe is a lot of buyers are going to come in because they're going to come in and be like, we've seen this game being played out before. He says something, he does something else, he's going to pull back. But what's interesting to figure out is two things. One is to see how the dollar index is currently performing. Now, the dollar index has actually started to move up post this news. So the strength in the dollar, does it lead into strength in bond yields? Because the bond yield is now down again. It was actually heading higher. Now, this is what I'm thinking. This is my belief that his aim is not to get the stock market higher, but to get the bond yield lower. He's going to win this battle if he's able to bring the bond yield lower. Look at the 2 year today. The 2 year is down 2%, 1.95 to be exact. The 10 year is down 1.59, 1.6%. If you look at that, that's not something that's going to even come close to trying to tell you that the 10 year is collapsing, the 2 year is collapsing. He doesn't want the numbers to go higher than 4.6, 4.7%. That's where they want to stop the 10 year treasury from going above. Now, that would require some form of news, and that's what we're getting today. So we're pretty much looking at a 2% down on the Nasdaq. That's baked in. I mean, okay, fair enough. It's 2.1% now. So we are just cratering and falling. So it's not looking good at all at this given moment. Keep in mind, this is all a recommendation that he's putting out because he's clearly trying to come out and say that this is something that I'm currently looking at. Now, how it plays out, that's something that we can figure out and see. My best guess, if this does stick, we could have a lot of tariffs back again, and that would be pretty dire for equity markets. If this doesn't stick on June 1st, he is also going to be the wolf or the boy who cried wolf all the time, right? He keeps coming out and saying tariffs on everyone and then backs off. So keep in mind, you got to keep in mind as to this whole game where maybe it's down 3% on the stocks, the Nasdaq's down 2%. Apple's going to be taking the Nasdaq down a lot more. So that's that's just hitting. So I mean 3.5% on Apple. So you're looking at that. At this moment, I'm just going to go in and try seeing if we can get some amount of news on anything that's happening currently. Mm, the European index is extending its losses down now about 2%. The For some reason, Donald Trump's Truth Social account now has some glitch. Apparently, they're saying there's no truths anymore left on Trump's Truth Social, but some glitch on his website that's currently going on. So yeah, and this is one thing that I've been thinking of also, right? That the tariffs are like a dial; they're not an on and off switch. So if stocks goes up, he may start feeling that he has a license to turn the dial back on. Stocks go down enough, the opposite is true. So he could be literally playing this game depending on how the stock market and the bond market reacts. So keep in mind that's something else that could very well be happening, but it's not something to really worry about at this moment. The larger portion to worry about is the fact that he's come out and said that the discussions with the European Union are going nowhere. And if that's the scenario, then we could be in for something really, really bad here. It's not going to end as soon as we believe it will. But if we do have something that happens over the weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if for some reason he just comes out and says he's had a great meeting, something great's happening. You never know. It's not necessary that that needs to happen today or tomorrow or over the weekend. It could happen a week later. It all depends on how the markets react over the week. Because whatever I've been able to figure out, it looks like he's judging everything based on the way the markets are reacting. So that's pretty much what's happening with Europe at this moment. Yeah. So let's just go in and see a few things that we can figure out as to what's currently happening. If there is anything that's worth watching, let me also just go in and put in the link so more people could join us. We could just maybe answer a few questions as well for a few people once they're in. I mean, this is something that it wasn't expected. I mean, these are things obviously none of us were expecting, but it's something to keep in mind. I mean, you don't want to be caught without having to know what you're going to be doing the next time. But the fact that the one thing that is fascinating for me to see is that we're down just 2%. It would be important to see where we close today, because the close today would decide a lot of how bad can this get. Does this get a lot of people out of the market, or does it still keep a lot of people in the market? Are we still going to be buying the, and this is no more a dip, right? Especially when you're down 2%. So keep that in mind, guys, because it's not something that's going to just turn on the dime, but keep that in mind. You could be having I think you could see maybe another few percentage, and in all seriousness, the pullback is warranted for the ride that we've had. Just looking at a 2% move is not too much. Let me just see if there's any more news that's coming out. I mean, it's a pretty impromptu video. It's nothing that we plan to do. Yeah, just that the Europe 600 index has extended its losses, falling about 2%. It looks like pretty much every small rally that you're seeing on the Nasdaq or the S&P 500, even before the markets opened, is being sold into. So that's never a good sign. So here's fascinating. The Polish trade minister just comes out and says that the EU and US have time for negotiation until early July. As far as I know, talks are going on, is what he says. So my bet is still on the fact that this is Trump's way of just trying to go in and go in with all guns blazing, trying to see how much juice he could get out of a trade negotiation in order to reduce his deficit as much as he can. Especially he's timed it very well because he's able to match it up with the bill being passed. So as the bill is getting cleared, he's able to also know that if his tax cuts are going to go through, he can keep these tariffs on longer than most people imagine, which is never a good thing. But again, these are the cards we're dealt. This is how we play. Let me just see. Trump threatens 25% import tax on Apple unless iPhones are made in the US. But you know what? If that happens, iPhones are going to now cost about 3,000 US dollars. Trump says European Union has been hard to deal with. It's it's just something that's been continuously going on. So in between of all of that, OnlyFans is looking to sell its business for $8 billion. So keep that in mind. That's a little bit more important than anything else. Yeah, let me see if we have some more data. Another thing that happened in the past few hours that we got information of was Apple is expanding its supply chain in India with a $1.5 billion Foxconn plant. Now, they're trying to shift their supply chain away from China to India. And Trump's not liking the fact that they're shifting it from China to India. He wants them to shift most of their manufacturing from China to America itself. That being said, this is going to be something that's EU Commission declines to comment on US trade tariffs until the call between EU trade chief and US trade representatives. That's what we were trying to say, that the call between the EU trade chief and the US trade representative is going to be happening today. So this is just him coming in there and saying, hey, I got to bring the 10-year yield down. I'm recommending something. Maybe it doesn't happen on Monday morning, but this is what I believe will happen. Now, that's just something that currently seems out of whack, but who knows? There's a lot of things that have been happening that are not necessarily currently being followed properly. So yeah, just this update. Okay, so now the volatility index is picking up even more. Now we're hitting 25.5, which is about a 25% increase. I don't know. The last time I think we saw this kind of an increase was 25%. Let me just go back and check. Yeah, 25% would be on a daily increase was 4th of April, so just after Liberation Day. So this is a really big volatility index candle that I'm looking at right now. We could be heading towards maybe 27 points, 27 on the volatility index, and that would be quite a sight. Let's keep a watch. Let's just see. What would be fascinating to see is if by the end of the close we're able to dip back in, like just get some form of buying, hold something. We're not closing at day's low. That's important, right? That would be something that would be pretty interesting to see, right? For everyone who's joining, just make sure you come like and subscribe to the video because we're going to be going live tomorrow again. I think 12 hours from now, post market close, we want to do a live somewhere 2 or 3 hours after the market closes because that's just going to be simpler. All the noise is out. So it just keeps things a lot more in the check. Let's just go ahead. Let's see, 20,730 on the Nasdaq 100. Let's just go down some of the cryptocurrencies also. How are they doing? You're looking at gold. Gold has been spiking, $3,352 an ounce. Hmm, fascinating. Let me just go in and try putting some of this into like a numbers thing so we know what exactly is happening. So saying that the trade deficit with the European Union is hitting about 250 billion dollars a year. I don't even know how they expect that to get solved. But yeah, so gold is breaking into pretty much since the rise. So we could even see gold heading back to its previous highs of 3,500 with the way things look. Uh, Cryptocurrencies got smashed. I remember seeing 111,000 on Bitcoin, looking at 107,000. Ethereum, I remember, was heading about 25, 2,600, 2,700. Drops down to about 25, 28. So not something that. Uh, Let me try seeing if there's some more news. Mm, let's also see if we can get something on the news front. Yeah, they're calling this free market capitalism now. That's what it is. But this is going to be fascinating. Especially, I mean, one of the things that I was able to see was you were looking at cryptocurrencies heading higher and making a move into all-time highs a lot faster than where everywhere else was. But at this moment, nothing to write home about. So let's keep a watch. Okay, so the German index is down about 2.5%. The Italian CAC 40 is down about, the French index is down about 2.7%. So you're looking at that. So for everyone that's just joining in, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep this live on till the market opens. And these are his words, right? I've long informed Tim Cook of Apple that I expect their iPhones that will be sold in the United States of America will be manufactured and built in the United States, not India or any place else. If that is not the case, of at least 25% must be paid by Apple to the US. Thank you for your attention to this matter. For me, this is the buy the dip day. I'm still not going to be buying today. I would still wait it out to see what exactly happens towards the end or close, because you don't want to be caught with some new news that comes out. At the moment, you're still looking at a 2% down on the NASDAQ, a 24% move on the volatility index. So nothing that we can currently say about any of this. But what I can say is that it is going to be a wild day. We've not had it for quite a while. It's been pretty silent about tariffs. I think it's time we make a new video trying to talk about tariffs as well. Maybe we will put one out over the weekend. That might be a timely matter. Let me see if I could get this. Yeah, I think we're about to be breaking 2,700 even on the NASDAQ. So not like we're going to be holding those levels. Yeah, we got an hour and 10 minutes before the markets open, but still pretty bad. I think this is purely his way of trying to come back in. And another thing that could happen is the European Union could have retaliatory tariffs back again. And if that's going to go through, then we could make the war all over again. And maybe this 10% is not what it seems, because he's going to be putting in 50% in his own numbers. Not sure how that's going to play out, but it's better to just keep a watch on the news, keep seeing what's currently happening. Mm. Let me see if I could get something. Yeah, one of the fascinating things is that the EU Commission declines to comment on the US trade tariffs until the call between EU trade chief and US trade representative takes place. Now, that could be a lot more uncertainty, because it could be a scenario where if the call doesn't go well, Europe decides to also put a tariff on America on June 1st. So keep that in mind as well. It's pretty much like Apple and EU are in the crossfire. This is pretty much Trump tariffs. I think these are just out of the ordinary, but not something you shouldn't be expecting from a man like him. It's He's done this before, so you shouldn't be surprised if he's doing more and more of these things. The good part is that you've been through this before, so you know what's going to happen. Remember, the second time when things happen, they don't usually get as worse as the first time. The first time is a short time, there is some form of a recovery. Let's also keep a watch. Okay, so you're seeing about 2.1%. Stocks are down about 4%. It's important to keep a watch on what happens exactly with Apple, because Apple's down about 3.7. Could it have a 5% down? That could take the S&P and the Nasdaq down a lot more. Apple hit by Trump comments about 25% tariff on foreign-made phones. Keep in mind that if there's so much bearishness that's heading out there, it's usually a time to buy as well. It's not necessary to buy today. It could be something that you do the next week as well, because you never know if things get worse from here, right? So you always want to be in a state where you're able to figure out, is it better that I am invested at this moment, or should I take two steps back, wait to see if this gets worse, or maybe if this gets better and then buy? Because with the way things are looking, you're looking at 193 on Apple at this moment. As of yesterday, we closed at 201. Now we're at 193. So at this moment, it looks like a 4% down for pretty much most of the stocks. You're looking at Amazon down 3%, because there would be an Europe effect there as well. Apple down about 3.85. ASML is down about 3% because it's a European-based company. Again, guys, just make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you're now part of the small cult that we're forming here. So shares of German car makers have fallen. BMW is down 4%, Porsche down 4.5, Mercedes down 4.3, and Volkswagen down 3.3%. I mean, this is a proper fairy tale story because it's not really going to happen. But US made iPhones, if they were made in the US, they would cost about $3,500 an iPhone. Not sure who's going to be paying that much for it. But I don't know. Maybe Tim Cook just needs to make a few phone calls, head out to meet the big man, and sort these things out. Let me try seeing if I could. Let me try seeing if I can add a poll in here. Maybe that would help us just get in some more. Yeah, let me just put in so you can put in whatever stocks you guys want to talk about. Right, I'm just going to pin this comment in so you guys can see this. This is fascinating. Yeah, let's put in a poll as well. Let's see. And let me try putting in more options this time. It might be actually fun to do this. Let's see what people actually come up with. Yeah, so we're gonna, and let's see. I mean, some of you might be here just for the drama, so you can come in and yeah, there you go. So just drop in with whatever you believe is going to be the. We know the cause of all of this, but what's going to happen because of it? That's the important part. Just going through to see if there is anything that's gotten hit substantially more than 4%. Into it's up about 7%, but that's because it had fabulous earnings. So that's something to keep in mind. Earnings haven't been dropping. I think this is just leverage that Trump has, considering that the market's been higher. He's able to pull this through. Yeah, Nvidia is down about 3.4. Fascinating. Workday is down about 8, but that was a result reaction. That's why it's collapsed so much. Nike's down about 3.2%. So that's taken a hit. Disney's down about 1.3. So I think you guys should be able to see the there. So if you want, you can decide what your answer would be. Who's supposed to, whether this is a buy the dip day or whether this is a sell the dip day because it's just going to dip more and more. That could be another reason. Let's just go back and see if there's anything new that's happened. Hi, Saipul. How's it going? Quite the day in the market. Looking at Nasdaq at about 20,738. So have you been trading something, any stocks, anything that you've been looking at? Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, I think we got already two people coming in and saying that it's pretty overhyped. Apple should be completely okay. That would be my view as well. I mean, Apple would be here for many decades, if not longer, than Donald Trump would be here for. So they will survive and they will thrive. Right. So that's something that's keep in mind. It's not something that they're not going away so easily. I guess I'm just gonna try seeing if I could get some more information. Maybe, get the whole story in here. Howard says it's going to be suing US over Trump international student ban. I think the market and people in general have more important things to worry about than this. So Volvo Cars CEO is coming out and saying that the customer will need to pay a large part of price increases related to tariffs. A 50% tariff would limit the possibility to sell a car like ours in the United States. Uh, some people are saying that Apple will probably have to come out and withdraw their guidance. Yeah, so things could get really interesting. So just keep in mind that this is something that's happened before. So don't expect to have a 20% drawdown from here, because remember, you still have the Europeans and Americans at the end of the day will sort their shit out and speak to each other. The bigger problem was always going to be the Chinese. And that seems to have solved itself. So it's not something to worry about today. But again, do remember, right? If things don't go well somewhere, you never know who comes in, says what happens, and you have another tariff on some country or some company, right? So one of the things that I was thinking about was a lot of these C-suite executives, the CEOs and all, go to sleep at night, not realizing next morning when they wake up, there's suddenly a tariff on them. All their business plans change. Factories now need to be shifted. Everything that needs to get done. Now, are you going to make all those changes just for 4 years? That's the that's the question that people are going to be answering. Just not something I think is going to be probable. If your time horizon is long enough, I don't think there's much to worry about. Yeah, futures globally are plunging after Trump threatens 25% tariff on Apple, 50% on Europe. The only thing heading higher is pretty much gold. And at the moment, you're living looking at the 2 year yield is now below 4, also. It's at 3.934. The 10-year yield is at 4.485. So you're looking at that as well. That's coming through. What will be important and something of a correlation is to try seeing whether the dollar index continues its pickup or whether it starts heading back lower. But you did see it go all the way from 99.1 to 99.6, currently trading at 99.3. Keep in mind, my bet is still we would see a recovery by next weekend. I don't really think this is going to turn into something that's going to be monumental, because it's the Europeans and the Americans. I mean, at the end of the day, they'll agree on something. All right. These guys, they might posture themselves differently, but at the end of it, they will still want to go ahead and get something done together. If not everything, but surely something. And if they're not able to do that, then I mean, $250 billion as a trade deficit is a lot. Something that can be worked out rather than a China-US trade deal, which was now heading into the 150s, right? So keep in mind that the largest trade deficit is with China. It's not with the European unions. And my bet is the Europeans would cave as well, because eventually they need the Americans more than the Americans need the Europeans. So it's not a China versus US kind of a scenario where the Chinese would be able to still fight it off for many years. But this is something like one of the things that I'm trying to think of is that the Chinese still decided to posture themselves in a very strong way, but continued negotiating at the back end, and they were able to get some form of a deal out. The Europeans just believe that they're going to get whatever they want, and that's not something that's going to happen. So, with the way things are looking, I have a feeling this is more of a today or a weekend issue rather than a month-long issue. I could have still imagined maybe the Chinese and the Americans not sitting down to talk because of their differences, but not the Europeans and the Americans. I mean, these guys could just travel on the whiff or whatever and start talking and have a deal signed in a week or 2 weeks. The thing is, he's only given you time till June 1st. So June 1st pretty much comes in another week. The problem that happens is the uncertainty behind it means that any country that's not listening to what he's saying could now have a tariff put up a week later. So what's stopping this whole 10% tariff that's been there till July 9th? Because it means nothing if I can just put a tariff on a particular company or a particular country in 15 days or in a week. So that's something that you should keep in mind. Right. So just a shout out again, if you guys have not subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to share this channel with everyone that you can, anyone it can help. If you have any stocks or anything that you guys want to talk about, just drop it in the comments. Also, make sure to go ahead and answer the poll because it's going to be fascinating by the time I end this. Who are we going to be blaming for all of this? And do we believe that Apple would be able to come out of this a lot stronger and be there even after Trump? Right. That's a question that we're trying to ask here. Yeah, at the moment, what we're looking at is a 1.7% fall on the Nasdaq, about 2.5, 3% on stocks. It's not as bad as I would have feared it to be, considering the scale at which both the announcements came in, not just on Apple, but also on Europe. Let me try seeing if we can get in some more data. Oh, we're going to break all of this down pretty much somewhere around. Oh, so here's another thing, right? Scott Bessent is coming at 11 o'clock to talk about the markets as well. So he's been usually bullish for the market. And keep that in mind as well, right? That's something that you should always remember, that he's been a bit more bullish than everybody else. So could very well be something that we should keep in, at least look out for. That if he comes in and he's able to soothe in the markets with what he believes could be some form of improvement in trade talks, that could be fascinating. Yeah. So some of the stocks, they're down. Nike's down about 2.6%. We were talking about it in today's live during the first session in the morning. We're still looking at about 20,750 on the Nasdaq. So that's still about 1.8% lower. So that's not something that we're recovering from. So still bad. Not sure it's that bad, but it is a lot worse. There would be a lot of people that would be selling in fear today that we're going to be starting to see a lot of the tariffs back again. They'll be selling in pre-market. They'll be selling wherever they can because they're just worried that they're now going to be seeing these tariffs come back in, possibility of seeing the previous lows. The important thing that I'm trying to convey here is that you're not going back to your previous lows based on, unless we're able to put on all the tariffs back again onto these countries, we're not going back and seeing our previous lows. This could very well be just a way of trying to bring the 10-year yields lower and not make them go skyrocketing higher, just so that everything can be calmed out here. Do we have any more news currently? Nothing at the moment from what I can see. It would be incredible to see if we could have some form of an intraday rally, though. Most likely would not go into any form of a situation where we could recover and turn into the green. That would be tough to do. So the Federal Reserve President Austin Goolsbee from Chicago says a 50% EU tariff is an order of magnitude different from the current situation. He's stating the obvious, and Goolsbee also says that tariff rates that high would be scary for the supply chain. If tariffs have a stagflationary impact, then that is the central bank's worst situation. So everyone's posturing to try telling this guy, saying, don't do what you're doing because it's going to cause more harm than you believe it will. Again, keep in mind, guys, you've seen this story play out before. There's no reason to panic. It's literally a time to just. That's the reason why we're having this live as well, because we just want to come out and tell people that you might see another percent, 2% lower, but we're not going back to see our previous lows unless and until all the tariffs on all the countries are back again. And majority of the tariffs that were on China need to come back again. So till the time that's not happening, you don't need to worry about. You could go down a few percentage points, but are you going to go down 20% from here? Absolutely not. Not on this news. If this news was that monumental, you would have already been down 3.5, 4% on the Nasdaq at least, right? Considering the fact that you also had a slap on Apple, so it's not a small thing that it's just gone one way on some companies, and everyone else has been forgiven for this, right? Yeah, so you're seeing the volatility index also up at about 24.6. So it's playing around in those levels, 20,752 for the Nasdaq. Keep in mind, like we're saying again, what we've been saying before, that Scott Bessent is going to be coming on TV to speak at about 11 o'clock. He's usually been bullish for the markets. Keep that in mind. We as investors are eternal bulls, so we do stay invested even during bad times. These are learning experiences. You have to deal with these drawdowns. This kind of volatility is an opportunity for you. Keep that in mind. Let's go back and try seeing. So, and for any of you that have not subscribed, just make sure you subscribe. So the next live that comes on, I think we're doing it in less than 12 hours. You'll be able to get a notification. And every time that we're live, you can then join in, ask your stock queries, put them into the comment section, and then we can shortly talk about them as well. All right. Let's just try seeing if cryptos had any form of a move. At the moment, it's just following the Nasdaq. The only reason I'm looking at it is because for the past maybe about a week or 2 weeks, it's been doing its own thing. It's been heading higher while the market's not. It's just languishing near its previous highs. You had Bitcoin hit a new high altogether. This could be good shorts building up, and this could be good long unwinding on Bitcoin. But then again, I mean, we don't trade Bitcoin. We usually look at equity markets itself. So we're not the best people to answer anything when it comes to crypto. But we're trying to give you more of a sense of where we believe the market can go from here. My belief is it's a head fake. Don't waste your time. Go to sleep. Figure it out later. So Wage Freeman says, I'm just joining here now, but after the whole China tariff backtracking, it seems pretty easy to not get too excited about this EU tariff announcement. Would you agree? Yes, absolutely. That's what we're trying to say as well, because we've seen this game play out before. We've seen how China, and I mean, for me, the Chinese and Americans are so far away from each other that if they can come together and find some form of a middle ground, the Europeans and the Americans can find a lot of middle ground for any and every other reason. They could just have more lobster imports into America and out of America into any of these kind of places in Europe. That being said, I do also want to caution all of the viewers that we could come into a scenario where the market can start getting uncertain about the fact. What I believe is the market's not falling today just based on the fact that, oh, we potentially could have tariffs next week. What it's currently believing is that if he's able to pull this off and get tariffs next weekend, he could very well also be coming in and putting in tariffs on countries that he does not get good deals with in the next few weeks as well. He doesn't need to wait till July 9th and keep that tariff level at 10%. If he can do this to the European Union, he could do this to a lot more other countries as well. So keep that in mind as well, because that's something that could be something to watch out for. That for me is a lot more uncertainty, which is why I do believe that the Nasdaq's down only about 1.8%, but the volatility index is up more than 20, 25%. That's because the uncertainty in the market is so high that does July 9th even make sense now? Because your word is not something you're sticking to. As the president, you're saying that I'm going to be allowing everybody a tariff reprieve and bring down my tariffs to 10% globally. And you're currently just coming out and saying that, okay, I'm making great progress with China. So your tariff on China is now 30%. While on European Union, you're going to be putting in a 50%, even though the European Union has a lower trade deficit than the Chinese. So just keep that in mind. That's the signal from the noise that we're trying to make here. We don't want to keep this live going on for too long, but this is something to just keep in mind. It's not the be all end all of investing when some guy just comes out and says, not just some guy, maybe the president comes out and says that here's tariffs. You've seen this all the way from April, all the way from February and March to some extent as well. And the markets have been reacting to it. If you can just tune yourself out from this noise of an intraday movement, breathe through it, you're going to be okay. All right. Companies are still making money. And the amount of time it takes some of these companies like Apple to build a plant in America, it'll be time for Donald Trump to leave office. So they don't think in 2 and 3 years, they think in 10 and 15 years. I would suggest most investors think in 3 to 5 years at least. So, short story, America, Donald Trump, the president decides to put a 50% tariff on the European Unions on 1st of June if the trade talks fail. Apparently, they're going nowhere by his words. He's unhappy that Tim Cook is not joining him on all these trips that he's making. He misses him. He wants him to work with him so that he doesn't put tariffs on him. Currently, the tariffs are being put on Apple if they do not build their factories in America, a tariff of 25%. Now, my bet, he's going to make a few calls. He's going to call up Trump and say, okay, I'm going to put in some factories. None of those factories are going to come up in President Trump's term. So he could always have this scenario where he comes in and says all of these things. Short story that I wanted to give you just about what's currently happening in the market. It's this is unscheduled, right? And this is not a live that we were planning to. Our live was more towards the next 11 hours. But whenever something like this happens, this is our aim that we're just be there with you guys. Anything that you guys want to shout out and let us know, keep coming through and we'll be there. Right. Heisenberg says, hi, how are you doing, brother? So it's a pretty fascinating day today in the market. I would be surprised if I see a 3% or a 4% down on the Nasdaq. I generally do believe you could get down all the way to 2.7, 2.5. I don't think you could get down 4.5% on this news. If it were that bad, there would have been selling all the way again right now. But we could get some selling towards the end of the day, because towards the end of the day, you would be people a lot of people would be worried not holding over the weekend. You have Monday as a holiday because of Memorial Day. So trading would begin only on Tuesday morning, which is a good 3.5, 4 days. And in the current scheme of things, anything can happen under the sun in 3 and 4 days, right? So a lot of people might just want to close out their positions, sell out some of their longs, take some profits off. Maybe even there would pretty much be just like Wage Freedom said, there would be pretty much like a Friday effect that would come in. So it could be your it could be pretty much something that purely affects global markets because everyone just chickens out and sells, right? Dow, what the heck is this, bro? Dow is the industrial average that's been going on all the way from the 1910, 1920s, even before that. It's pretty much 30 of the biggest industrial averages. It doesn't hold that much consequence anymore because the world has shifted from an industrial and utility play to uh, a tech-oriented play. The Apples, Microsoft, Googles, Metas of the world now conquer the biggest companies, not the water utilities and the solar companies or electric providers. So keep in mind it's not something that's very important, but the Dow still holds significant importance because of how old the index is. It is a barometer, but I would say your better barometer is the S&P 500. That's the top largest 500 companies in America. That's pretty much a barometer that you should always keep in mind. So that's something that is currently worth watching, is what happens to the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq. The Dow would take its own hit, but as a matter of fact, it's not really as important as the S&P 500 as a barometer for the whole index. So if you're looking at the Nasdaq, or if you're looking at the S&P 500, the top 500 companies can be a barometer for how the US economy is currently doing. So if you see earnings increase and you're seeing companies make more sales and make more earnings, you're looking at a situation where the S&P 500 should head higher as a company makes more earnings. 500 of the largest companies in America, if they start making more earnings, that basically means that now you're looking at a higher S&P 500 price, right? Same is the case with tech companies in the Nasdaq 100. So if you start seeing companies in the tech industry starting to do very well, you're going to start seeing the Nasdaq 100 do exponentially well. The Dow Jones Industrials usually looks at any of your healthcare, the United Healthcare of the world. You're looking at a utility-based companies. These are not companies that are tech, or for that matter of fact, most of them are part of the S&P 500, and the Dow Jones just has about 30 companies. So the Dow Jones would not be the best barometer for the US economy, considering how polarized the US economy has gotten with just the abundance of tech that's currently there in America. So let's try seeing. It's been a while since I saw any of the updated news. For any of you that's joining in new, go ahead and subscribe so you can get any of the updates that we make. New videos should be coming out shortly as well. Federal Reserve President Goolsbee says rate cuts still possible over 10 to 16-month horizon. Ah, that's fascinating. Yeah, this is the fascinating part, right? I think a lot of people see it just as another Trump tweet, which can be cancelled by another one in a few hours or in a few days. Nobody knows about that, right? I don't think a lot of European investors are selling on the news. So I think he's done it so many times that now we're not sure whether he's going to go through with it. And that's exactly the concept. So again, just to rewind, let all of you know, America's President Donald Trump's putting in a 30%, 25% tariff on Apple if they're not going to be making their iPhones in America. He's also looking at putting in a 50% tariff on June 1st on the European Union if they are not ready to go ahead with the deal that he wants. Currently, the deal's going nowhere, is what he says. It might be going everywhere, but in order for him to get whatever he wants to get, that could be the thing that he currently wants. So just make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We should be going live in another 10 hours to go through whatever the mess has happened. We'll do it post market because that's a lot simpler to get done. We just don't want too much news to try screwing up the day for us. So keep that in mind. We don't want to be live during market hours unless and until there's something that's crazy that happens. So go ahead. I mean, I think you can also subscribe to the channel and get those notification bells so you know when we're there at most points of time. Let's go to the next one. Heisenberg says, what does public and privately held company like stock prices are different or what? Privately held, they're just not traded that much. There's not that much liquidity. So keep that in mind. There are offshore trading that happens in those kind of companies, but they don't trade the way public companies do, which is a Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 3:15, 3:30 a.m. And there's not that much liquidity because it's obviously private. Public has a lot more amount of people that can come in and trades 5 days a week. Private's usually an arm's length transaction that happens behind the doors. So, like, imagine if you wanted to buy shares of Google, you can do it openly on a Monday to Friday during market hours. If you wanted to buy shares of OpenAI, you can't do that on Monday to Friday during market hours because there is no market that way. It is a private market separately. So you would need to contact a particular broker. He would need to find a seller of OpenAI shares. You would be the buyer. There would be a transaction that it's like a real estate transaction. right? You look at a buyer, you look at a seller, you put them together, there's a broker in between, and you get it done. The thing with public markets is that it's so deep and liquid that you could have buying and selling that keeps happening on a minute by minute or a second by second basis in the millions of shares. And that's what makes public markets so diverse and fun. Yeah, so we're pretty much holding near the lows of the Nasdaq 20,735. You're looking at the volatility index also being at about 24.7. Again, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's okay. It's nothing to really worry so much about. I don't think people are going to be worried so much about the fact that there is actually going to be a huge problem that happens. The fact that the Fed is coming out and saying that rate cuts are still possible over a 10 to 16-month horizon means they can act when required. At the moment, I would expect the index to open somewhere maybe 100, So 5750 on the S&P 500 could be something that we head towards. Chicago Fed's Goulby on CNBC comes out and says the economy still has strength that it had prior to April 2nd. If tariffs are not a big factor, then back to that in 10 to 16 months in order to cut rates. So the Fed is doing its job of coming out and letting the world know that, their hand is there behind most of this, but we just don't want these things to spiral into something a lot more. So again, guys, we're not going to take up too much time. We're going to call it quits in about a few minutes. Let me just go in and see if there's something that has happened, anything new that's happened, at least maybe not from the White House, but at least something from the European side if there's something. Because if they're not retaliating until the call happens, that's a good sign. Because that's something that I would have expected them also. Let me just check this question, which is the best platform where we can have real-time data regarding the stocks like Binance or crypto. I would suggest go into something like an interactive brokers, or you could even go into something like TradingView. That should pretty much give you all of your real-time data for stocks, crypto, commodities, a lot of them that can come through out there. So keep that in mind. TradingView.com is, I would say, maybe your best bet when it comes to figuring out most of the information that you want related to stock prices, crypto, or commodities, even foreign exchange and the bond market for that matter of fact. And you can go back and see historical data as well, because that will help you out as well. Yeah. So the market was looking a bit complacent in the past few days. It was looking like it had some form of scenario where it was getting tired, but that's not a reason. Like, I mean, considering the rally that we've had, some form of a pullback is worth it. But let's see. I mean, I generally thought that we can keep this like about 45 minutes, but we've been getting some questions. So we keep going ahead. I don't want to keep pushing it because I have shit to do as well. But let's see. If this starts getting a little more interesting, maybe I'll stay a little bit longer. But at the moment, it's looking like we're going to settle at an open of about 2% lower for the NASDAQ, 3.5% lower for most other currencies. The USD JPY, that's the dollar yen, is looking like it's coming back to its previous lows of 142,500. Keep in mind, you're also looking at something in the range. I just need to see Apple. Yeah, so Apple's at about 3.3% lower at this moment. Okay. So I think we're going to call it quits for this one. We're going to be having a live in about 10 hours, exactly 10 hours from now. So make sure you guys join in for that. For everyone that's not, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You can see a few of our other videos. I think we should have about 20 videos that are out, shorts included, 20 to 25. Go ahead, have a look at those. Maybe that helps. Coming back to the main crux before we leave, what we believe is that it's a head fake. Don't stress too much about it. If you have capital and you're looking for a time to buy, this is your time to buy. Look forward to seeing what this place will be a few years from now or a few months from now, and think in the long term. but rest of it, your everything looks pretty okay. Don't get fearful when everybody else is getting fearful, is what I would say. It's the time to get greedy when everybody else is fearful. Right. Anyways, take care, guys. Have fun. See ya. Bye.